Hi all, Rick here. I've done many videos covering the topic of Earth, Sol, and the various stations in the system. For some reason Star Trek is obsessed with it, and I can't think why. But one thing keeps being overlooked: our younger, celestially adopted sibling, the Moon. The Moon, also known as Terra Luna or Luna, is a Class D satellite in orbit of Earth, the Sol system. While not originally inhabited, thanks to the lack of atmosphere and minimal gravity, the Moon soon comes to house many Federation lives and ends up as a completely self-sufficient colony world of Earth. Luna fulfilled multiple roles as an early target for testing things like colonization efforts, a training ground for Starfleet, construction yards, and mining sites. With the creation of artificial gravity, living on the Moon eventually becomes a reality in the late 21st century. However, it technically had been home to others before we set foot here as a species. Before mankind made their first visits here, the Vulcans actually established a small observation post on the Moon to keep an eye on the developing human race. Eventually, the desire for materials and exploration fueled mankind's urge to reach that first step, and the Moon was regarded as the first goalpost in attaining space exploration. The colonization of the Moon had been an ongoing project since before the Third World War, and in 2039, the Lunar Colonies government was founded as a managing power of the first permanent colony sites. The first structures were set-up bases in lava tubes under the Moon's surface, and a massive undertaking to accomplish. However, these areas could then be used as pit stops for further space exploration and as staging grounds over time. Unfortunately, efforts were curtailed when mankind decided not to learn from history, and World War III substantially slowed development on the efforts, but it did not entirely stall them. The only option for construction on the Moon was to form large insulated domes and tunnels into the ground to create vacuum-sealed areas of breathable atmosphere, protected from radiation and micrometeors. Therefore, many of the earliest settlements were not visible from the surface beyond a small network of connected domes, while the rest of the structures were beneath the rock. Atmosphere circulation and preservation was among the most important systems to be set up, and resources were imported from Earth to sustain the small population. Lunar Colony 1 is the first established colony on the surface, and it was the largest site up until the late 22nd century. It's likely that as time went on, this colony site was either renamed or simply faded from common use, as more sites emerged across its surface. The earliest colonists had to take regular injections of myofibrillin, a hormone to counter the effects of atrophy in microgravity. Tranquility Base was founded at the site of the Apollo 11 landing, and 30 kilometers south of what would become New Berlin. Tranquility Base was not really a civilian site for a while, and even later in the Moon's life it would still be more of an industrial site, as the home to one of the oldest Starfleet shipyards. This was the site of James Kirk's first off-world family outing, thanks to the historic nature of the location, and it became a routine tourist destination. By the mid-23rd century, the lunar landing site was immortalised as a protected park with a resort. The lander itself now sits here preserved in the vacuum of space, eventually coming under the ownership of the Smithsonian Annex there. A sizable portion of settlers came to the Moon in the wake of the eugenics wars or crisis, with both augments and followers of Khan's philosophy moving here and to Mars in an attempt to escape persecution after the ending of the wars. Over time, they would integrate back into the society as Earth's influence expanded. The city of New Berlin was established between 2063 and 2069, and became one of the most influential sites on the Moon, and it seems to retain strong ties to its Germanic origin, even into the late 24th century. New Berlin would continue to expand until it became one of several sites that could be seen from the Earth's surface. Tycho City was founded in 2071, becoming a large civilian settlement. However, it featured a military base here named Tycho Base, which soon came under the jurisdiction of Starfleet after it was founded. This was one of their earliest extra-Earth installations, although Starfleet naturally worked very closely with New Berlin and the lunar government. Routine training took place at Tycho Base, and Jack Ransom was born here, as was Dorian Collins. After its founding, Tycho became the seat of the government for Luna. One of the earliest ventures to the Moon was the Orpheus mining colony, built in 2090, where artificial gravity was never installed. It was one of many such mining expeditions. By 2155, the Moon was technically a self-sustaining colony site no longer dependent on the resources of Earth. Military bases still operated on the Moon, with the Mako, Earth's United Military, holding training sites here until the Makos were absorbed into Starfleet. During the 22nd century, Luna acted as an early warning system for Starfleet in the Earth-Romulan War, and in 2161, as a satellite of Earth, it was technically a founding member of the Federation. Additionally, a defensive base was stationed here from which smaller interception vessels could launch. The main spaceport was simply named Lunarport, and acted as the main trade hub to and from the Moon, which was managed by Starfleet and later the Federation. While most of the complex was underground, there was an additional facility in orbit that was part of the lunar complex, where ships could dock and transfer cargo, and it was the 5th largest colony on the Moon. Thanks to its role, it acted as a transportation hub to the rest of Luna, a trade nexus, and it had extensive recreational facilities. Lunar Receiving was a secondary station above the Moon that was also made to facilitate cargo transfer. Many of these Moon sites were eventually connected by underground and overground tram networks, and soon concentric circles of expansion began to form as development continued. In 2324, Beverly Howard was born in Copernicus City. Copernicus was built into the crater of the same name and also housed a Starfleet shipyard that specialised in propulsion technology. Collectively, the numerous shipyards across its surface and in held orbit of the Moon are referred to as the lunar shipyards. Most Starfleet ships, however, are not constructed at these berths, but do source parts from them. Most ships that are constructed at Luna appear to be civilian craft, like the freighter of Cassidy Yates, Cosa. However, Tranquility Base Shipyards was the primary shipyard for the Constitution-class USS Defiant and Excalibur in the 2250s. There were many other sites, such as the Lunar Bay, New Angeles, Armstrong City, Aldrin, Landau, New Cleveland, Lorentz, and Relativity. By 2373, 50.2 million residents lived on Luna, and while very similar to the cultures of Earth, some independent streaks had emerged. For example, lunar natives still referred to it simply as the Moon, while those on Earth had learned to clarify which moon they were talking about. Additionally, they were nicknamed lunar schooners by Earthlings, although they never adopted this term for themselves. Thanks to artificial gravity, there were even lakes on the Moon now. However, these were still localised in settlements, and the Moon overall could not retain an atmosphere of any kind. While the notion of creating a containment field around the Moon to hold such an atmosphere was postulated, ultimately this is incredibly dangerous to do in case it ever fails. Instead, the use of good old pressurised domes prevails even into the 25th century. The only real development in this field is the size of the domes, some now large enough to contain entire parks, clouds, and forests. Most of these structures are too small to be seen individually, but on a clear night the surface is illuminated and you can discern the artificial presence here much as the lights of a city of Earth. Expeditions across its surface were common, with hiking across the Sea of Clouds, which was considered a park. While these areas were open to space beyond pressure domes, advancements in spacesuits made travelling easier, and of course, emergency transporters were a thing, allowing for instantaneous extraction in case of danger. Alongside Earth, the Moon is one of the safest locations in the Federation. Colonised areas are protected by deflector grids and tractor beams that prevent impact from meteors, and everything is radiation shielded. An ongoing affair, the colonisation of the Moon was tied strongly to the development of Starfleet and the Federation. In terms of being a political entity, it does maintain its own governance, but the lunar colonies remain under the umbrella of the United Earth, which itself is a Federation member. This principle of ownership seems to be the default for most Federation member worlds, who assign ownership of any colonies to the parent planet. Exceptions are made, however, with uninhabitable planets like gas giants, a notable example being Andoria, which is the frozen moon of the gas giant Andor. Of course, if colonies wanted independence, then generally that was something to be discussed and established, usually as part of their founding, but satellites were generally considered a part of their homeworld. Moon colonisation is very much a real and developing field, with institutes all over Earth looking out at our favourite orb, and following these projects is like watching science fiction evolve into reality. The history of the Moon in Star Trek seems to have always sought to build on these aspirations, evolving with time, and I hope that one day in the not too distant future we can establish our pit stop on the Moon for deeper exploration. Sure, resource gathering is going to be a motivating factor, but also a necessary one, and as far as I see it, with Earth being finite, there's only one direction we can head. Up and out. I've been Rick, thanks for watching this video on the sci-fi history of the Moon colonies in Star Trek, and until the next lore video, thanks again, and goodbye.